right? That's probably the best I'm gonna be able to do. It's probably the best. Let me see. That's the best I can do right now, folks. And I apologize for it. I apologize for it. Hold on, I hear my dog. Give me 1 second. Anyway, my dog's outside. Okay. I haven't shot a YouTube video probably. I don't even remember the last time I shot a YouTube video. And it's normally been about farming things, growing vegetables, chickens, incubators, and wine making, baking, cooking. I don't know. And I've spent a lot of time posting videos on my Facebook channel, but I want to get back to my YouTube channel. So uh, I'm not going to pick up where I left off on my YouTube channel. I'm going to pick up right where I stopped on my Facebook channel. So you can check me out on Facebook, .black, D-O-C, space B-L-A-K. I think I have about 50 or 60 more spots for friends. And I think I have like 4,970, 40, 50, 60, 70, I don't know, 20, over 4,900. So get the Facebook friendship request in, and that way you can see some of my other videos and some other content. Some of which you may not care for, but that's cool too. So anyway, let's get to this video. Let me tell you how I want to shoot this video. It's going to be rustic. It's going to be unedited, obviously, because it's already seen. But I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and I keep overthinking it and overthinking it. So today I woke up and said, look, let me just shoot a video, and then as time goes on, my videos will get better. I'll edit the videos, I'll improve my lighting, I'll get a better camera, all that kind of stuff. But I want to start somewhere. A lot of times, you just got to get started with things. So, I'm over 50. I don't know, about 5 years ago, I don't keep track, 5, 6 years ago, I had some spinal cord issues. I was given a wheelchair, which I never sat in. I refused the wheelchair at VA hospital, and I thought I was in big trouble physically and mentally and emotionally. But I decided to do some stuff about it. Uh, I don't want to get into all that right now, but here I am now. I now enjoy working out. I've always enjoyed the outdoors all my life. I still enjoy cooking. Uh, but I've got a new lease on life, basically, and I just want to share some stuff with you. So, as you can see, I have some workout equipment, and I work out at home. Haven't been to the gym in a while because of my work schedule and all the things that are going on. So I work out at home. What I want to do is I want to warm up because I'm tired from work last night, and I'm of course a little nervous. So I want to run maybe a mile. Uh, should take me about, I think I run in about 8 minutes. That'll help me relax, and then after I run that mile, I'll talk about uh, you know how to run a mile, controlling your breathing, and all this other stuff. And then I'll start my workout. And this is gonna be a long video. That's why I do it live. You can come back for whatever. I'll start my workout, and I'm gonna play a little bit of a book that I read many times, that I listen to in audio a lot of times when I work out. Um, is dealing with combat. A lot of people are familiar with The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This book is called the Book of the Five Rings, where The Art of War is mainly about military combat. The Book of the Five Rings is more about, it does speak of uh, military combat, but it's mainly about hand-to-hand combat, the philosophy and the art of it. And I'm gonna play a little bit of it because it's very, very, very a brilliant book, and I want to talk about it in reference to different things. So I think I don't know, I warmed up a couple times and keep thinking about my content and how to do this and that. Like I said, later I'll script everything out and all kinds of stuff. Maybe even have two cards. I don't know. But let me get a mile in real quick, and then we'll get into it. I said I already warmed up. So let me talk about exercising over 50. When you're over 50, man, don't do anything cold. When I say don't do any exercise cold, don't pick up anything heavy cold. Always warm up. Always warm up. Because a lot of times people injuries mainly have to do with them not warming up more so than the exercises that they've done. Once you warm up good, you'll be able to do, you know, you'll be able to work out, you know, in a more relaxed manner. And again, that book talks about a few things I'm speaking of. The thing about, I guess, anyone getting back into working out is you definitely, I can't stress this enough, you gotta start out as slow as possible. If you come home in your first year of working out, if you come home sore one time, you overdid it. You should not be sore at all. That means you overdid it. We're talking about building muscle and all this kind of stuff. You know, starting out, you have to condition yourself first to get to that point. That could take a year, 2, 3 years. Well, at least a year and a half. You know. So all you see these shows with Biggest Loser, killing them, you know, injuring those people overweight and stuff like that. It's sad to see, and I think it's done to turn people off of getting into shape. People think that they have to, you know, have killed themselves. So let me get this mile in. Like I said, I already warmed up pretty good. So let me get a mile in. Like I said, we'll talk. And we will talk. Let me see here. This mile that I'm about to run is gonna, as a matter of fact, is going to tie into the Book of the Five Rings. I'm going to turn some of the Book of the Five.
These things all frighten. You can win by making best use of the enemy's frightened rhythm.
Give me a second, I'm going to back it up.
Three ways to parry his attack.
I'll let this play while I run for this 8 minutes. Please be patient or come back. Please, just
by
be patient.
dashing the enemy's longsword to your right, as if thrusting at his eyes when he makes an attack, or to parry by thrusting the enemy's longsword towards his right eye with a feeling of snipping his neck, or when you have a short longsword, without worrying about parrying the enemy's longsword, to close with him quickly, thrusting at his face. These are the three ways of parry. You must bear in mind that you can always clench your left hand and thrust at the enemy's face with your fist. For this, it is necessary to train well. To stab at the face. To stab at the face means when you are in confrontation with the enemy, that your spirit is intent on stabbing at his face, following the line of the blades with the point of your longsword. If you are intent on stabbing at his face and body will become rideable. When the enemy becomes rideable, there are various opportunities for winning. You must concentrate on this. When fighting, the enemy's body becomes as if rideable, you can win quickly. So you ought not to forget to stab at the face. You must pursue the value of this technique through training.
Other stuff that we'll get into later.
To stab at the heart. To stab at the heart means when fighting and there are obstructions above or to the sides, and whenever it is difficult to cut, to thrust at the enemy.
Being on this treadmill and talking to you
You
guys.
must stab at the enemy's breast without letting the point of your longsword wave, showing the enemy the ridge of the blade square on, and with the spirit of deflecting his longsword.
Oh.
The spirit of this principle is often useful when we become tired or for some reason our longsword will not cut. You must understand the application of this method. To scold, tut. Scold means that the enemy tries to countercut as you attack. You countercut again from below as if thrusting at him, trying to hold him down. With very quick time to cut, scold the enemy, thrust up,
Keep my mouth closed.
and cut.
I gotta talk.
This time is encountered time.
Okay, sorry about that. Knock my power out. We can talk about that too. Let me get back on my. Hold on. Knock this mile out. 1 second. Still have to knock out this mile. We still gotta knock this mile out. So give me a second here. See if I can pick up exactly where I left off at. Let's see here. We're just about there.
Gorin no Sho, a book of 5 rings. Written.
All right, here we go. We're in the water book.
Also, the longsword in place of the body.
Let's go.
Usually, we move the body and sword at the same time to cut the enemy. However, according to the enemy's cutting method, you can dash against him with your body first, and afterwards cut with the sword. If his body is immovable, you can cut first with the longsword, but generally you hit first
Again,
with the
controlling our breathing,
then with the longsword.
emotions,
Research as well.
our mind.
Cut and slash. To cut and slash are 2 different things. Cutting, as called cutting is decisive.
8-minute violin.
Slashing is nothing more than touching the enemy.
Two of these.
Stronger.
You can graduate with
It is slash.
basic training in the
When
army.
you cut, your spirit is resolved.
Seriously.
You must appreciate
2 hours, 16 minutes.
if you first slash the enemy's hands or legs, you must then cut strongly. Slashing is in the spirit the same as touch. When you realize
Just
this,
relax.
you become indistinguishable. Learn this well. Chinese monkey thought. The Chinese monkey thought is the spirit of not stretching out your arms.
Put your mind in
The
a happy
spirit
place.
of getting quick without in the least extending your arms before the enemy comes. If you are intent upon not stretching out your arms, you are effectively far away. The spirit is to go in with your whole body. When you come to with your arms weak, it becomes easy to move your body in. You must research this well.
Get your form and your rhythm together.
You
This is what I got mine right now.
The spirit of human natural motion is to stick to the enemy and not separate from it. When you approach the enemy, stick firmly with your head, body, and neck. People tend to advance their head and neck quickly, but their body reacts behind. You should stick firmly so there is not the slightest gap between the enemy's body and
Almost
his
a quarter
body.
mile in.
You must consider this carefully. strive for height. While you need to strive for height in minutes, when you close with the end, to strive with it for superior height without cruising. Stretch your legs, stretch your hips, and stretch your neck face to face with it. When you're thinking of one,
Focus on
you
staying
get
relaxed.
thrust in strong. You must learn to apply stickiness. When the enemy attacks, and you also attack with the longsword, you go in with a sticky bit and fix your longsword against the enemy as you receive his touch. The spirit of stickiness is not hitting very strongly, but hitting so that the longsword can accept its easy. It is best to approach as calmly as possible, hitting the enemy's longsword with stickiness. The difference between stickiness and entanglement is that stickiness is firm and entanglement is weak. You must appreciate this. The body strike. The body strike means to approach the enemy through the gap of his guard. The spirit is to strike him with your bow. Turn your face a little aside and strike the enemy's breast with your left shoulder outside. Approach with the spirit of bouncing the enemy around, striking as strongly as possible in the time.
You know you're burning fat and you start sweating.
If you achieve this method of closing with the enemy, you will be able to knock him 10 or 20 feet away. It is possible to strike the enemy until he is dead. Train well. 3 ways to parry his attack. There are 3 methods to parry a attack. First, by attaching the enemy's longsword to your right, as if thrusting his eyes with the next attack.
Be consistent.
Or to parry by thrusting the
Your
enemy's
movement is
longsword
about.
towards his right eye with the feeling of slipping his neck. Or when you have a short longsword, without worrying about parrying the enemy's longsword. To close
Control your breathing.
thrusting at his face with your left hand. These are the 3 ways of parrying. You must bear in mind that you can always take your left hand and thrust at the enemy's face with your fist. Force is necessary to train. To stab at the face.
Halfway
To
there.
stab at the face means when you are in confrontation with the enemy, that your spirit is intent on stabbing at his face, following the line of the blades with the point of your longsword. If you are intent on stabbing at his face and body are aligned.
We're at 0.6 miles per hour.
There are various opportunities to learn. You must concentrate on this. When finding that the enemy's body becomes as if blinded, you can win quickly. So you ought not to forget to stab at the face. You must pursue the rally of this technique in training. To stab at the heart. To stab at the heart means
Good now.
when there are obstructions apart towards your sides, and whenever it is difficult to cut, to thrust at the enemy. You must
27.
stab at the enemy's breast without letting the point of your longsword breathe, showing the enemy the ridge of the blade square off.
Easy work.
Of deflecting its longsword. The spirit of this principle is often useful when you become tired. For some reason, our longsword will cut. You must
Easy
understand
work.
the application of this method. To stall, cuts tough. Stall means that when the enemy tries to counter-cut and you attack, you counter-cut again from below as if thrusting behind the body.
It's like kicking up on a whip, finishing
The
the round.
rapid time to cut, stall the enemy, thrust up, and cut. This time is encountered time and time again in the shape of the way. The way to work is to time and cut simultaneously with raising your longsword as if to thrust the enemy. You must know this in repetitive practice. The smacking by its smacking is meant that when you grab swords with the enemy, you need to attack
One time.
with a tidum, smacking his sword and cutting. The spirit of the smacking is not running or smacking strongly, but smacking the enemy's sword in accordance with his attack type, primarily attacks.
7 minutes.
If If you understand the timing of how hard your long sword travels to get, your sword will not be on track from the left. You must research sufficiently to realize there are many enemies. There are many enemies.
Oh, wow. 724.
Draw both sword and companions and assume a wide stretch left and right hand.
It ain't too bad.
The spirit is to chase the enemies around from side to side, in where they come.
Uh-oh.
Absorb their attack and rhythm. Go to be first and top
It's 1 mile.
Carefully examine
It's 1 mile, family. So now that we're warmed up, let's see. No, we shouldn't be too out of breath. Let me get this right. 1 second. I stepped on the remote and knocked it off.
alternately with your
Let's see
sword.
if this right.
Waiting gear.
Okay, so now we can start our workout. I think I'm gonna do what? 100 sit-ups. I don't know, 50, 60, 70 push-ups, some other stuff. I don't know. Let's get it on. Along with some more stomach exercises, different things like that. Also, we're going to talk about what I said earlier, the Book of the Five Rings, about the philosophy and the art and the mindset of a warrior in combat. And I'll apply it. This book was written a long time ago, so I'll apply it to, I guess, boxing and MMA to kind of two together. So see what I'm talking about. And I know that certain fighters, some I like, some I don't like, but I'll mention both. I know they've studied this book. Let's get any exercise I do a warm-up set first. Do a warm-up set before you do your real
It is difficult to
sets.
attain this if you do not learn strategy well. If you train well in this way, strategy will come from your heart.
Get your form
You'll
together.
be able to win and win.
Your first set. Don't get it
You must
crazy.
train diligently.
You're not in NFL.
Direct communication. The spirit of direct communication is how the true way of the Nihon Ichi school is received and handed down. Oral tradition. Teach your body strategy. Recorded in the above book is an outline of Ichi school sword fighting. To learn how to win with the longsword in strategy, first learn the 5 approaches and the 5 attitudes.
So warm up set
And
for the
absorb
stomach.
the way
You're going
of
to
the
be a whole lot more
longsword
to do.
naturally in your body.
Warm up couple
You
push-ups.
must understand spirit and timing.
Spirit and
Handle the
timing.
longsword naturally, and move body and legs in harmony with your spirit. Whether beating 1 man or 2, you will then know values in strategy. Study the contents of this book, taking 1 item at a time, and through fighting with enemies, you will gradually come to know the principle of the way. Deliberately, with a patient spirit, absorb the virtue of all this, from time to time raising your hand in combat.
Warm up set.
Maintain this spirit whenever you cross swords with an enemy. Step by step, walk the 1,000-mile road. Study strategy.
Any time you're putting resistance on a muscle, that's an exercise. So there's an infinite number of different exercises. Let me see if this camera's right. That you can do. I don't know if I need to come down closer here or what. Let me see. Sorry, folks. There's an infinite number of different variations to exercises that you can do to target muscles in different ways. You know, so I just did sit-ups, and this will target more of my upper abdominal muscles than the sit-ups target more of the lower on the middle. And I'm not from suck my stomach in. I did this exercise, not gonna say wrong, but not totally correct for a long time until I did some research and really studied up on it. And I realized I'm supposed to be shrimping in instead of just coming straight down to target the upper and lower obliques and even the serratus muscles. Let me see, warm up set. Let's go. Ugh. Back in. Turn this back on too. Hold on.
Over the years
What I'm talking
and
about is coming
achieve
up.
the spirit of the warrior. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday.
Ugh.
Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. Next, in order to beat more skillful men, train according to this book, not allowing your heart to be swayed along the sidetrack.
You hear that?
If you attain this way of victory, then you will be able to beat several tens of men. What remains is sword fighting ability, which you can attain in battles and duels. The second year of Showa,
Here
the
we go.
12th day of the 5th month, 1645. Shinmen Musashi. The Fire Book.
This is my favorite book.
In this,
In a
the
sense.
Fire Book of
Listen.
the Itoichi School of Strategy, I describe fighting as fire. In the first place, people think narrowly about the benefit of strategy.
Very narrow.
By using only their fingertips, they only know the benefit of 3 of the 5 inches of the wrist. They let a contest be decided, as with the folding fan, merely by the span of their forearms. They specialize in the small matter of dexterity, learning such trifles as hand and leg movements with the bamboo practice sword. In my strategy, the training for killing enemies is done by way of many contests.
See that?
Fighting for survival, discovering the meaning of life and
Wait a minute.
death, learning the way of the sword, judging the strength of attacks, and understanding the way of the edge and ridge of the sword. You cannot profit from small techniques, particularly when full armor is worn. My way of strategy is the sure method to win when fighting for your life,
You hear this?
1 man against 5 or 10. There is nothing wrong with the principle 1 man can beat 10, so 1,000 men can beat 10,000. You must research this. Of course,
Now he's
you
very
cannot
well.
assemble 1,000 or 10,000 men for everyday training.
Listen.
But you can become a master of strategy by training alone with the sword, so that you can understand the enemy's strategy, his strength and resources,
I want you to
and
listen.
come to appreciate how to apply strategy to beat 10,000.
He's about to explain combat
Any
strategy.
man who wants to master the essence of my strategy must research diligently,
Research
training morning and evening.
and
Thus can he polish his skill, become free from self, and
Free from
realize
self.
extraordinary ability. He will come to possess miraculous power. This is the practical result of strategy. Depending on the place, examine your environment.
Listen.
Stand in the sun. That is, take up an attitude with the sun behind you. If the situation does not allow this, you must try to keep the sun on your right side. In buildings, you must stand with the entrance behind you or to your right.
Obviously.
Make sure that your rear is unobstructed and that there is free space
It's
on
not
your
my
left, your right side being occupied with your sword attitude.
He's
At
talking about
night, if
positioning.
the enemy can be seen, keep the fire behind you and the entrance to your right, and otherwise take up your attitude as above. You must look down on the enemy and take up your attitude on slightly higher places. For example, the camisa in a house is thought of as a high place. When the fight comes, always endeavor to chase the enemy around to your left side.
Like
Chase him
Floyd does.
towards
Floyd Mayweather.
awkward places and try to keep him with his back to awkward places.
Keep your
When the
opponent
enemy gets
off
into an
balance.
inconvenient
Just
position,
listen.
do not let him look around, but conscientiously chase him around and pin him down.
It's a chess game more than
In
just a fight.
houses, chase the enemy into the thresholds, lintels, doors, verandas, pillars, and so on. Again, not letting him see his situation.
Make him focus on what you're
Always
doing.
chase the enemy into bad footholds, obstacles at the side, and so on,
Boxing calls
using the
simple traps.
virtues of the place to establish predominant positions from which to fight. You must research and train diligently in this. The 3 methods to forestall the enemy.
Listen,
The first is to forestall him by attacking. This is called ken no sen, to set him up. Another method is to forestall him as he attacks. This is called tai no sen, to wait for the initiative. The other method is when you and the enemy attack together. This is called tai no sen, to accompany him and forestall him. There are no methods of taking the lead other than these 3. Because you can win quickly by taking the lead, it is one of the most important things in strategy.
That's why the boxing said
There
be
are several
first.
things involved.
Jab, win the fight.
You must make the best of the situation. See through the enemy's spirit so that you grasp his strategy and defeat
Listen,
him. It is impossible to write about this in detail.
no,
The first, ken no sen.
listen.
When you decide to attack, keep calm and dash in quickly, forestalling the enemy.
Leo the Machida.
Or you can advance seemingly strongly, but with a reserved spirit, forestalling him with the reserve. Alternatively, advance with as strong a spirit as possible.
Jump in quickly, or
When
you
you reach
know.
the enemy, move with your feet a little quicker than normal,
See,
unsettling him and overwhelming him sharply.
hold on.
4. With your spirit calm, attack with a feeling of constantly crushing the enemy from first to last. The spirit is to win in the depths of the enemy. These are all ken no
The
sen.
2 brothers in the UFC.
The second, tai
Stop
no
him.
sen. When the enemy attacks, remain undisturbed, but feign weakness. As the enemy
Don't
reaches
be
you,
all jittery.
suddenly move away, indicating that you intend to jump aside. Then dash in, attacking strongly, as soon as you see the enemy relax.
See,
This is one way. Or, as the enemy
it's sort of
attacks,
timing.
attack more strongly, taking advantage of the resulting disorder in his timing to win. This is the tai no sen principle.
Wait till they attack and then attack
The
at the
third,
opening that they
tai
provide.
no sen.
If they're throwing a punch,
When
you
the
leave it
enemy
on
makes
this
a
open.
quick attack,
you
you
fire up
must
down
attack
there.
strongly and calmly.
But you gotta pay
Aim
attention.
for his weak point as he draws near, and strongly defeat him. Or, if the enemy attacks calmly, you must observe his movement, and, with your body rather floating, join in with his movements as
Move
he
slow
draws
with
near.
it.
Move quickly and cut him strongly.
Then
This is
Explode.
tai no sen. These things cannot be clearly explained in words.
is learning
You
and
must
controlling the
research what is
rhythm
written.
and timing,
In these
Of
3
fight.
ways of
the
forestalling,
distance,
you must judge the
the
situation.
mindset.
This does not mean that you always attack first, but if the enemy attacks first, you can lead him around.
See,
In strategy, you have effectively won when you forestall the enemy.
if they
So you
lunge
must
at
train
you
well
and you move to the
obtain
left,
this.
now they gotta come to the left. So now you're leading.
To hold down a
You
pillar.
have to understand that.
To hold down a pillar means not allowing the enemy's head to rise. In contests of strategy, it is bad to be led about by the enemy.
That's what
You
Floyd
must
with
always
them
be able
guys
to
like
lead
that.
the enemy about.
He's leading them around.
Obviously, the enemy will also be thinking of doing this, but he cannot forestall you if you do not allow him to come out. In strategy, you must stop the enemy as he attempts to cut. You must push down his thrust and throw off his hold when he tries to grapple.
Whatever rhythm he's
This
trying to
is the
get,
meaning of to hold down.
get
a
all
pillar.
up in that. With
When
your
you have
attacks.
grasped this principle, whatever the enemy tries to bring about in the fight, you will see in advance and suppress
I
it.
see too many boxing matches where they're
The spirit
training.
is to check his
I
attack
punch 3
at
for
the
punch, you
syllable
punch 3
pat.
for punch. I punch 3 for
When
punch.
he
Oh,
jumps, check his advance at the syllable j, and check his cut at k. The important thing in strategy is to suppress the enemy's useful actions, but allow his useless actions.
they got a good jab,
However,
knock it down,
doing
and
this
count over
alone
the top.
is
Make them
defensive.
don't want to do what they're good at.
First, you must act according to the way. Suppress the enemy's
They got a
techniques,
good leg kick,
forming
every time they
his
leg kick,
patterns, and
hit
then
him with a
command
hard-ass
his own
jab.
attack.
Let them know if you
When
do
you
that
can do
again, this
this,
is what
you
you're
will
gonna get.
be a
They'll stop.
master of strategy. You must train well and research holding down the
Research.
Crossing at a ford. Crossing at a ford means, for example, crossing the sea at a strait, or crossing over 100 miles of broad sea at a crossing place.
It kind of
I
means two
believe
things.
this
Make it work
crossing at a
easy,
ford occurs
and the
often
shortest
in
distance to
man's
a point
life.
is a straight line.
It means setting sail even though your friends stay in harbour, knowing the routes, knowing the soundness of your ship and the favour of the day. When all the conditions are met and there is perhaps a favourable wind or a tailwind, then set sail. If the wind changes within a few miles of your destination, you must row across the remaining distance without sail. If you attain this spirit, it applies to everyday life. You must always think of crossing at a ford. In strategy also, it is important to cross at a
Oh
ford.
God, my back.
Discern the enemy's capability and, knowing your own strong points, cross the ford at the advantageous place, as a good captain crosses a sea.
Remember, don't throw no punch from way down
If
over
you
here.
succeed in crossing at the best place, you may take your ease. To cross at a ford means to attack the enemy's weak points and to put yourself in an advantageous position.
To get
This
three
is how
out.
to win in large-scale strategy. The spirit of crossing at a ford is necessary in both large and small-scale strategy. You must research this well. To know the times. To know the times means to know the enemy's disposition in battle, to be flourishing or waning. By observing the spirit of the enemy's men and getting the best position, you can work out the enemy's disposition and move your men accordingly. You can win through this principle of strategy, fighting from a position of advantage. When in a duel, you must forestall the enemy and attack when you have first recognized his school of strategy, perceived his quality and his strong and weak points. Attack in an unsuspected manner, knowing his meter and modulation and the appropriate timing.
Right.
Knowing the times means, if your ability is high, seeing right into things. If you are thoroughly conversant with strategy, you will recognize the enemy's intentions and thus have many opportunities to win.
Oh boy.
You must sufficiently study this.
Sufficiently
To
studied.
tread down the sword. To tread down the sword is a principle often used in strategy. First, in large-scale strategy, when the enemy first discharges bows and guns and then attacks, it is difficult for us to attack if we are busy loading powder into our guns or notching our arrows. The spirit is to attack quickly while the enemy is still shooting with bows or guns.
While they got
The
open.
spirit is to win by treading down as we receive
tell
the
you about
enemy's
it.
attack.
A person throws a lot of punches,
In
they're
single
also
combat,
leaving a lot
we
of
cannot
openings.
get a decisive victory
There's
by
nothing wrong
cutting
with-
with a tidum
There's
tidum
nothing wrong
finger
with
in the wake of the enemy's
fighting a guy
attack with
who-
longsword.
Go
We must
do a lot of
defeat
punches.
him at the start of his
dunk and
attack,
weave and do
in a
all what you want
spirit
to
of
do.
treading him down
Versus
with
someone
the
who's
feet,
covered up,
so that he
is
cannot
more
rise again to
sharp and
attack.
articulate with this stuff.
Treading does not simply mean
A
treading
lot
with
of
the
people
feet.
like wild boxers,
Tread with the body,
like
tread with the spirit, and of course,
Wilder.
tread and cut with the longsword.
Wild.
You must
Leaving all
achieve the
the
spirit of not allowing the enemy to attack a second time. This is the spirit of forestalling in every sense.
Oh God.
Once at the enemy, you should not aspire just to strike him, but to cling after the attack. You must study this deeply. To know collapse. Everything can collapse. Houses, bodies, and enemies collapse when their rhythm becomes derailed. In large-scale strategy, when the enemy starts to collapse, you must pursue him without letting the chance go. If you fail to take advantage of your enemy's collapse, they may recover.
In other words, you get the guy hurt.
In
Yeah,
single
yeah,
combat, the
understand
enemy
it.
sometimes loses timing and collapses. If you let this opportunity pass, he may recover and not be so negligent thereafter. Fix your eye on the enemy's collapse and chase him, attacking so that you do not let him recover. You must do this.
But don't go
A
crazy.
chasing attack is with a strong spirit.
And wear yourself out.
You must
You
utterly
recover
cut the
what
enemy
you-
down so that he does not recover his position. You must understand utterly how to cut down the enemy.
Go back.
To become the enemy. To become the enemy
Listen.
means to think yourself into the enemy's position.
Listen.
In the world, people tend to think of a robber trapped in a house as a fortified enemy. However, if we think of becoming the enemy, we feel that the whole world is against us and that there is no escape. He who is shut inside is a pheasant. He who enters to arrest is a hawk. You must appreciate this. In large-scale strategy, people are always under the impression that the enemy is strong and so tend to become cautious.
Listen.
But if you have good soldiers, and if you understand the principles of strategy, and if you know how to beat the enemy, there is nothing to worry about. In single combat also, you must put yourself in the enemy's position.
You gotta
If
read
you
through his
think
poker
here
face.
is a master of the way who knows the principles of strategy, then you will surely lose. You must consider this deeply. To release four hands. To release four hands is used when you and the enemy are contending with the same spirit, and the issue cannot be decided. Abandon this
Stalemate.
spirit and win through with an alternative
Y'all both
resource.
got good jab, good whatever.
In
Give
large
that up.
scale
Do something else.
when there is a four-hand spirit, do not give up. It is man's existence. Immediately throw away this spirit and win with a technique the enemy does not expect.
Ah,
In single combat also,
but you
when
got
we
to
think
have
we have
all
fallen
these tools
into
in your
a
arsenal to
four-hand
be out.
situation, we must defeat the enemy by
All this-
changing our mind and applying a suitable technique according to his condition. You must
Still
be
got
able
lots
to
of sit-ups
judge
to do.
this. To move the shade. To move the shade is used when you cannot see the enemy's spirit. In large-scale strategy,
You gotta test
when
it.
you cannot see the enemy's position, indicate that you are about to attack strongly to discover his resources.
A good feint.
It is easy then to defeat him with a different method once you see his resources. In single
Do
combat,
something what
if
you
the
want to do.
enemy takes up a rear or side attitude of the longsword so that you cannot see his intention, make a feint attack,
Yeah.
and the enemy will show his longsword, thinking he sees your spirit. Benefiting from what you are
You want to
shown,
know what
you
he's
can
trying to
win
do.
with certainty. If you are negligent,
That helps
you
your
will
strategy.
miss the timing. Research this well.
Oh, goodness.
To hold down a shadow. Holding down a shadow is used when you can see the enemy's attacking spirit. In large-scale strategy, when the enemy embarks on an attack, if you make a show of strongly suppressing his technique, he will change his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Then, altering your spirit, defeat him by forestalling him with a void spirit. Or, in single combat, hold down the enemy's strong intention with a suitable timing, and defeat him by forestalling him with this.
Like Leo the Machida.
You must study this
If they
well.
rush in, meet him with a strong punch.
To pass on,
They'll stop
many
rushing in.
things are said to be
Or a
passed
strong
on.
kick to the side. They'll stop
Sleepiness
rushing
can be passed on, and yawning can be passed on. Time can be passed on also. In large-scale strategy, when the enemy is agitated and shows an inclination to rush, do not mind in the least. Make a show of complete calmness, and the enemy will be taken.
Make sure
by
he
this
knows that
and
you can
become
come back.
relaxed. When you see that this spirit has been passed on, you can bring about the enemy's defeat by attacking strongly with a void spirit. In single combat, you can win by relaxing your body and spirit, and then, catching on the moment the enemy relaxes, attack strongly and quickly, forestalling him. What is known as getting someone drunk is similar to this. You can also infect the enemy with a bored, careless, or weak spirit. You must study this well.
Nick Diaz style.
To cause loss of balance. Many things can cause a loss of balance. One cause is danger, another is hardship, and another is surprise. You must research this. In large
You
scale,
know the difference between the three.
it is important to cause loss of balance. Attack without warning when the enemy is not expecting it, and while his spirit is undecided, follow up your advantage and, having the lead, defeat him. Or in single combat, Start by making a show of being slow, then suddenly attack strongly. Without allowing him space for
Again,
breath to
yes.
recover
Do a
from the
lot of
fluctuation
slow,
of spirit,
soft punches. Then
you must
bang,
grasp the
bang.
opportunity to win. Get to the field.
You think he's tired, then he'll explode.
To frighten. Fright often occurs, caused by the unexpected. In large-scale strategy, you can frighten the enemy not by what you present to their eyes, but by shouting, making a small force seem large, or threatening them from the flank without warning. These things all frighten. You can win by making best use of the enemy's frightened rhythm. In single combat also, you must use the advantage of taking the enemy unawares by frightening him with your body, longsword or voice, to defeat him.
Thought
You
process.
should research this well.
Simple movements. Like Kevin Holland's little
To
leg
soak
kick.
in,
Just a little
when
pissy
you have
stuff.
come to grips and are
Slapping,
striving together with the enemy, and you
Common
realize
stuff,
that you
right?
cannot advance, you soak in and become one with the enemy. You can win by applying a suitable technique while you are mutually entangled. In battles involving
Trip
large
again.
numbers, as well as in fights with small numbers, you can
But you
often
do
win
that hanging
decisively with the advantage of knowing how to soak into the enemy, whereas, were you to draw apart, you would lose the chance to win. Research this well. To injure the corners. It is difficult to move strong things by pushing directly, so you should injure the corners. In large-scale strategy,
Angles.
it is beneficial to strike at the corners of the enemy's force. If the corners are overthrown, the spirit of the whole body will be overthrown. To defeat the enemy, you must follow up the attack when the corners have fallen. In single combat, it is easy to win once the enemy collapses. This happens when you injure the corners of his body, and thus weaken him. It is important to know how to do this, so you must research this deeply.
Make sure you get your wind up and endurance.
To throw into confusion. This means making the enemy lose resolve. In large-scale
They don't know
strategy,
what to do.
we can use your troops to confuse the enemy on the field. Observing the enemy's spirit, we can make him think here, there, like that, like this, slow, fast. Victory is certain when the enemy is caught up in a rhythm that confuses his spirit. In single combat, we can confuse the enemy by attacking with varied techniques when the chance arises. Feint a thrust or cut, or make the enemy think you are going to close with him, and when he is confused, you can easily win. This is the essence of fighting, and you must research it deeply. The three shouts. The three shouts are divided thus: before, during, and after. Shout according to the situation. The voice is a thing of life. We shout against fires and so on, against the wind and the waves. The voice shows energy. In large-scale strategy, at the start of battle, we shout as loudly as possible. During the fight, the voice is low-pitched, shouting out as we attack. After the contest, we shout in the wake of our victory. These are the three shouts. In single combat, we make as if to cut and shout, "Hey!" at the same time to disturb the enemy. Then in the wake of our shout, we cut with the longsword. We shout after we have cut down the enemy. This is to announce victory. This is called Sengo no Koi, before and after voice. We do not shout simultaneously with flourishing the longsword. We shout during the fight to get into rhythm. Research this deeply. To mingle. In battles, when the armies are in confrontation, attack the enemy's strong points, and when you see that they are beaten back, quickly separate and attack yet another strong point on the periphery of his force. The spirit of this is like a winding mountain path. This is an important fighting method for one man against many. Strike down the enemies in one quarter or drive them back. Then grasp the timing and attack further strong points to right and left as if on a winding mountain path, weighing up the enemy's disposition. When you know the enemy's level, attack strongly with no trace of retreating spirit. In single combat too, use this spirit with the enemy's strong points. What is meant by mingling is the spirit of advancing and becoming engaged with the enemy, and not withdrawing even one step. You must
They've already
understand
had a decent couple sets.
to crush. This means to crush the enemy regarding him as being weak. In large-scale strategy, when we see that the enemy has few men, or if he has many men but his spirit is weak and disordered, we knock the hat over his eyes, crushing him utterly. If we crush lightly, he may recover. You must learn the spirit of crushing as if with a hand grip. In single combat, if the enemy is less skillful than yourself, if his rhythm is disorganized, or if he has fallen into evasive or retreating
Muscles that you utilize will
you
hang
must
around.
crush him straightway,
Muscles that you
with
don't
no
utilize
concern for his
won't
presence,
hang around.
and without allowing him space for breath. It is essential to crush him all at once. The primary thing is not to let him recover his position, even a little.
Once you
You
get
must
your
research
opponent off
this
balance,
deeply.
keep him off balance.
The Mountain Sea Change. The Mountain Sea spirit means that it is bad to repeat the same thing several times while fighting the enemy.
Right.
There may be no help but to do something twice, but do not try it a third time.
Thank you.
If you once make an attack and fail, there is little chance of success if you use the same
Keep doing the
approach
same
again.
thing. That's not working.
If you attempt a technique which you have previously tried unsuccessfully and fail
Give it
yet
up.
again, then you must change your attacking method. If the enemy thinks of the mountains, attack like the sea. And if he thinks of the sea, attack like the
You
mountains.
go punch and kick him.
You
He'll
must
kick and punch.
research this deeply.
I'm halfway
To
joking, halfway
penetrate
not.
the depths. When we are fighting with the enemy, even when it can be seen that we can win on the surface with the benefit of the way, if his spirit is not extinguished, he may be beaten superficially,
Right.
yet undefeated in spirit,
Thank you.
deep inside.
One more.
With this
Haymaker
principle
left
of
in it.
penetrating the depths, we can destroy the enemy's spirits in its depths, demoralizing him by quickly changing our spirit. This often occurs. Penetrating the
Shock and
depths
awe.
means penetrating with the longsword, penetrating with the body, and penetrating with the spirit. This cannot be understood in a generalization. Once we have crushed the enemy in the depths, there is no need to remain spirited, but otherwise we must remain spirited. If the enemy remains spirited, it is difficult to crush him. You must train in penetrating the depths for large-scale strategy and also single combat.
Come on, who's fine good with that? This is
To renew. To renew applies
You
when
want
we
my
are
back
fighting
on
with the
that.
enemy
I'll
and an
see when I work
entangled
out.
spirit arises where there is no possible resolution.
whatever's not
We
sore
must
yet,
abandon
I'll do
our
more
efforts.
sets on that.
Think of the
Well, I want
situation
you
in
sore
fresh
right there.
spirit.
I've been working out for a couple of years. So
To renew
to
when
make
we
a
are
point where I
dead
can get a
with the
little sore.
enemy means that without changing our circumstances,
You don't want to
we
be
change
sore starting
our
out in your
spirit
first
and
year,
win
18
through a
months at all.
different technique.
For many
It is
reasons.
necessary to consider how to renew
To be
also
hard to
applies
recover.
in large-scale strategy.
You can risk injury, going
Research
back,
this
and it
diligently.
stops you from working out. And it crushes your
Rat's
spirit.
head, ox's neck. Rat's head and ox's neck means that when we are fighting with the enemy, and both he and we have become occupied with small points in an entangled spirit, we must always think of the way of strategy as being
Holding
with
the
a
head,
rat's head
you know.
and an ox's neck.
When
Whenever
people
we
got
have
here with a
become
nice
preoccupied with
strike.
small details, we must suddenly change into a large spirit,
I wish I could still fight
interchanging
and
large
demonstrate
with
this.
small. This is one of the essences of strategy.
Prozac fought.
It is necessary that the warrior think in this spirit in everyday life. You must not depart from this spirit in large-scale strategy nor in
Spanish
single
guy.
combat. The commander knows the troops. The commander knows the troops applies everywhere in fights in my way of strategy.
The more
Using the
muscles
wisdom of
you work
strategy,
as well,
think of the
the more
enemy
fat
as your
you'll
own
burn.
troops. When you think in this way,
Now your
you
body got
can
to
move
burn
him at
fat
will
here, here,
and
here,
be
here,
able
here,
to
here,
chase him around.
at the same time.
You become the general,
It's more
and the
efficient.
enemy becomes your troops. You must master this.
These muscles that you don't like or
To let
whatever.
go the hilt. There are various kinds of spirit involved in letting go the hilt. There is the spirit of winning without a sword. There is also the spirit of holding the long sword but not winning. The various methods cannot be expressed in writing. You must train well.
I'm starting to really feel it in my
The
back
body
a
of a
lot.
rock. When you have mastered the way of strategy, you can suddenly make your body like a rock, and 10,000 things cannot touch you. This is the body of a rock. You will not be moved.
Not A-Rock,
Oral tradition.
A-Rock.
What is recorded above is what has been constantly on my mind about Ichi school sword fencing, written down as it came to me. This is the first time I have written about my technique, and the order of things is a bit confused. It is difficult to express it clearly.
Working with bands.
This book is a spiritual guide for the man who wishes to learn the
from
way.
your eccentric and
My heart has
concentric
been
moves
inclined
going
to the way of
both ways.
strategy from my youth
Hey, this
onwards.
is
I have devoted myself to train my hand,
a 40-pound
tempering
man.
my body, and attaining the many spiritual attitudes of sword fencing. If we watch men of other schools discussing theory and concentrating on techniques with the hand,
As long as you
even though they
maintain a
seem
small
skillful
sweat,
to watch,
you know you're
they
okay.
have not the slightest true spirit.
Now, if you got a big fight coming up, you're gonna
Men
be
who
on
study
pay-per-view.
in this way
Then
think
you
they
might
are
want to
training
step
the
it up.
body and spirit, but it is
You're
an
not gonna be on
obstacle to
sugar
the
and all
true
that.
way,
You'll be
and its
alright.
bad influence remains forever. Thus, the true way of strategy is becoming decadent.
Back to
dying.
sit-ups.
The true way of sword
Oh, my
fencing
stomach.
is the craft
All
of
the way
defeating
around.
the enemy in a fight, and nothing
Next
more
one.
than this. If you
You
attain
see,
and
I'm not killing
adhere to the
myself.
wisdom of my strategy, you need never doubt that you will win. The second year of Showa, the 5th month, the 12th day, 1645, Shinmen Musashi.
Now listen to this next book.
The Wind Book. In strategy, you must know the ways of other schools. So I have written about various other
Israel.
traditions of strategy in this, the Wind Book.
The last outlander.
Without knowledge of
Not
the
a
ways
son.
of other schools, it is difficult to understand the essence of my Ichi school. Looking at other schools, we find some that specialize in techniques of strength using extra long swords. Some schools study the way of the short sword, known as kodachi. Some schools teach dexterity in large numbers of sword techniques, teaching attitudes of the sword as the surface and the way as the interior. That none of these are the true way, I show clearly in the interior of this book. All the vices and virtues, and rights and wrongs. My Ichi school is different. Other schools make accomplishments their means of livelihood, growing flowers and decoratively colouring articles in order to sell them. This is definitely not the way of strategy. Some of the world's strategists are concerned only with sword fencing, and limit their training to flourishing the longsword and carriage of the body. But is dexterity alone sufficient to win? This is not the essence of the way. I have recorded the unsatisfactory points of other schools one by one in this book. You must study these matters deeply to appreciate the benefit of my Nikko Ichi school. Other schools using extra long swords. Some other schools have a liking for extra long swords. From the point of view of my strategy, these must be seen as weak schools. This is because they do not appreciate the principle of cutting the enemy by any means. Their preference is for the extra long sword, and relying on the virtue of its length, they think to defeat the enemy from a distance.
And to really get in close on him.
In this world, it is said, 1 inch gives the hand advantage. But these are the idle words of one who does not know strategy. It shows the inferior strategy of a weak spirit, that men should be dependent on the length of their sword, fighting from a
Yeah,
distance
saying a lot.
without the benefit of strategy. I expect there is a case for the school in question liking extra long swords as part of its doctrine, but if we
Strength it
compare
up.
this with real life,
Strength the belly
it is
out.
unreasonable. Surely we need not necessarily be defeated if we are using a short sword and have no long sword. It is difficult for these people to cut the enemy when at close quarters because of the length of the long sword. The blade path is large, so the long sword is an encumbrance, and they are at a disadvantage compared to the man armed with a short companion sword.
Spin around right up on.
From olden times it has been said, great and small go together. So do not unconditionally dislike extra long swords. What I dislike is the inclination towards the long sword. If you consider large-scale strategy, we can think of large forces in terms of long swords, and small forces as short swords. Cannot few men give battle against many? There are many instances of few men overcoming many. Your strategy is of no account if, when called on to fight in a confined space, your heart is inclined to the long sword, or if you are in a house armed only with your companion sword. Besides, some men have not the strength of others. In my doctrine, I dislike preconceived, narrow spirit. You must study this
well.
well.
Work up top on the sides, now we're gonna come from underneath.
The strong long sword spirit
And
in other schools.
do some torso twist with it too.
You should not speak of strong and weak long swords. If you just wield the long sword in a strong spirit, your cutting will become coarse, and if you use the sword coarsely, you will have difficulty in winning. If you are concerned with the strength of your sword, you will try to cut unreasonably strongly, and you will not be able to cut at all. It is also bad to try to cut strongly when testing the sword. Whenever you cross swords with an enemy, you must not think of cutting him either strongly or weakly. Just think of cutting and killing him. To be intent solely on killing the enemy. Do not try to cut strongly, and, of course, do not think of cutting weakly. You should only be concerned with killing the enemy. If you rely on strength, when you hit the enemy's sword, you will inevitably hit too hard. If you do this, your own sword will be carried along as a result. Thus the saying, the strongest hand wins, has no meaning. In large-scale strategy, if you have a strong army and are relying on strength to win, but the enemy also has a strong army, the battle will be fierce. This is the same for both sides. Without the correct principle, the fight cannot be won. The spirit of my school is to win through the wisdom of strategy, paying no attention to trifles. Study this well.
Oh, man.
Use of the shorter long sword in other schools. Using a shorter long sword is not the true way to
Waistline all the way around.
In ancient times, tachi and katana meant long and short swords. Men of superior strength in the world can wield even a long sword lightly, so there is no case for their liking the short sword.
Oh God, it's hurting.
They also make use of the length of spears and halberds. Some men use a shorter long sword with the intention of jumping in and stabbing the enemy at the unguarded moment when he flourishes his sword. This inclination is bad. To aim for the enemy's unguarded moment is completely defensive and undesirable at close quarters with the enemy. Furthermore, you cannot use the method of jumping inside his defense with a short sword if there are many enemies. Some men think that if they go against many enemies with a short or long sword, they can unrestrictedly frisk around, cutting in sweeps, but they have to parry cuts continuously and eventually become entangled with the enemy. This is inconsistent with the true way of strategy. The sure way to win thus is to chase the enemy around in a confusing manner, causing him to jump aside, with your body held strongly and straight. The same principle applies to large-scale strategy. The essence of strategy is to fall upon the enemy in large numbers and to bring about his speedy downfall. By their study of strategy, people of the world get used to countering evading and retreating as the normal thing. They become set in this habit, so can easily be paraded around by the enemy. The way of strategy is straight and true. You must chase the enemy around and make him obey your spirit. Other schools with many methods of using the longsword. I think it is held in other schools that there are many ways of using the longsword in order to gain the admiration of beginners. This is selling the way. It is a vile spirit in strategy. The reason for this is that to deliberate over many ways of cutting down a man is an error. To start with, killing is not the way of mankind. Killing is the same for people who know about fighting and for those who do not. It is the same for women or children, and there are not many different methods. We can speak of different tactics, such as stabbing and mowing down, but none other than these. Anyway, cutting down the enemy is the way of strategy, and there is no need for many refinements of it. Even so, according to the place, your longsword may be obstructed above or to the sides, and you will need to hold your sword in such a manner that it can be used. There are 5 methods in 5 directions. Methods apart from these 5, hand twisting, body bending, jumping out, and so on, to cut the enemy, are not the true way of strategy. In order to cut the enemy, you must not make twisting or bending cuts. This is completely useless. In my strategy, I bear my spirit and body straight and cause the enemy to twist and bend. The necessary spirit is to win by attacking the enemy when his spirit is warped. You must study this well. Use of attitudes of the longsword in other schools. Placing a great deal of importance on the attitudes of the longsword is a mistaken way of thinking. What is known in the world as attitude applies when there is no enemy. The reason is that this has been a precedent since ancient times, that there should be no such thing as "this is the modern way to do it" dueling. You must force the enemy into inconvenient situations. Attitudes are for situations in which you are not to be moved, that is, for garrisoning castles, battle array, and so on, showing the spirit of not being moved even by a strong assault. In the way of dueling, however, you must always be intent upon taking the lead and attacking. Attitude is the spirit of awaiting an attack. You must appreciate this. In duels of strategy, you must move the opponent's attitude. Attack where his spirit is lax, throw him into confusion, irritate and terrify him. Take advantage of the enemy's rhythm when he is unsettled, and you can win. I dislike the defensive spirit known as attitude. Therefore, in my way, there is something called attitude no attitude. In large-scale strategy, we deploy our troops for battle, bearing in mind our strength, observing the enemy's numbers, and noting the details of the battle. This is at the start of the battle. The spirit of attacking is completely different from the spirit of being attacked.
I'm an hour in.
Bearing an attack well with a strong attitude and parrying the enemy's attack well is like making the
I
walls
can save it for another day.
tiles.
I got other stuff to do.
When
So.
you attack the
Peace.
enemy, your spirit
Thanks for
must
hanging in
go
there.
to the extent of pulling the stakes out of the wall and using them as spears and halberds. You must examine this well. Fixing the eyes in other schools.